Hi everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're taking a look at CLog3 for the Canon R6 and the 1DX Mark III. Canon have released this for these two cameras over the last couple of days, and we're just going to, I've taken some test footage, we're going to go through it and we're just going to look at it together, actually some real life footage and how you can use this kind of footage. Why have they given us CLog3? Well, Canon actually think of these cameras, I'm lucky enough to own the R6, they think of these cameras as pro camera bodies. That means that theoretically you should be able to use it for pro purposes like making films or wedding videos or anything like that, something that professionals are going to use. Along with releasing CLog3, they've released the ability to record on both cards simultaneously. So you've got backup if you're a wedding photographer, for instance, or a wedding hybrid shooter where you're recording video and photos. For video and photos now you can both record on both cards at the same time, so you've got backup footage, duplicate footage, or both times, so you're not going to lose any footage if one card does give up. So that's brilliant. That takes these cameras to a pro level in my eyes. Now the CLog footage, why would you need to use CLog in the first place? Well, you're going to see the quality difference between the two and the grading abilities between the two bits of footage as well in a minute. Basically, to have CLog, it gives you the ability to match the CLog footage out of an R6 or an R5 with their cinema cameras like the C500 or the C70. That means you can theoretically use this camera as a backup camera, a B camera and a C camera, whatever it is, for pro purposes, and that's a really good option for pro film shooters out there. You haven't got to have two similar cameras, you can match the footage colour wise and grade wise with a cheaper camera, for instance like this R6. That's a really good purpose. Right, but let's jump into the footage. I'll show you just a little bit of test footage, what I've shot, and it's interesting. There's a few things you have to think about while you're filming in CLog, so we'll just play it. Now this is standard Canon profile, this is what I usually shoot in. It's 4K, 25 frames per second, just no colour correction or anything like that, just out of the camera. Jake's doing some modelling, my son, for us on this particular shoot. Then CLog, this is what you get, CLog3 straight out of camera, no grading, it's just what you see out of the camera and you can colour grade it then. And it gives you a more dynamic range to play with the different colours, and this is what you see. This is just a lot that I've found through, I'll link it in the description down below, from a couple of guys that do this kind of thing, and it's obviously adds a lot more saturation. The highlights are brought down and the shadows brought up, so it just gives you that bit more of dynamic range in the image. I think it looks pretty good, to be fair. Jake having a laugh here. Again here, the comparison between the two, you can see the saturation, the shadows are slightly more faded if you like, and the highlights are brought down a little bit, and it just looks like a really good picture. I like the saturation, I like the colour. It's obviously a 10-bit colour as well. So we go just a little bit more, 4K 25 standard profile. You can see there that the sky is sort of blown out quite a lot, and then the shadows are quite dark as we go down. In the next little bit in CLog, we've got that nice sun star, so the highlights are just more detail-y, and then the shadows, it's just more detail in the shadows. Everything's a bit more clear in sort of a dark and light thing. See, you can see there where the highlights are lower and the shadows are just a little bit higher on the right hand side, if that makes sense. Okay, 1080p, 120 frames per second standard. This is what you'll see out of the camera, just sort of recording standard Canon profile, and then we go to 1080p 120 frames per second in CLog3 graded, and you can see immediately we've got a little bit more detail in the sky. You can see like the clouds and the blue poking through there through the trees, and then the colours are obviously nice, the saturation is a lot better and everything just looks a little bit nicer. In a studio kind of situation, which is where I use this camera most for shooting B-roll of products, this is the standard Canon profile, this is what it usually looks on my videos, and this is where I'm torn between CLog, whether it's good for my situation. Next is CLog coming up in just a little bit, colour graded, and I just think there's a little, might be user error. I just want to sort of stress I'm not a professional as of yet. It just doesn't look as clear for me. Obviously those shadows are brought up a little bit and it's not as punchy. The saturation is a little bit better, but I'm just concerned with the amount of noise that's in the image. Now, I have done a little bit of research on this, and there is sort of minimum levels of ISO that you have to use for CLog, so just make sure you do your research. I've got to look and research a little bit more for my particular purposes, but you can see in this still frame there's quite a lot of noise in the right hand side. You have to get your exposure right when it comes to CLog. Make sure your exposure's right, make sure your lighting's right, get everything perfect, and make sure your ISO is as low as possible for the less noise. I did change the settings again, and I recorded a little bit more. Now the ISO was on low 100. I'm shooting at 1/200th of frames per second, f1.4 CLog3, and this did look a little bit better when I brought the ISO down to a low setting, and yeah, it looks a little bit better. Still not as clear as the normal setting, but that is slow motion, the 1080p as well. So that's my experience so far. It's great that Canon have released this option with the R6. For outdoor purposes, I see it being an absolute bonus. Indoors, maybe marginal. I've got to learn, obviously, a little bit more how to use it properly, but we'll do that. We'll do some more follow-up videos, so if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do subscribe, press the bell so you don't miss any uploads, and we'll do some more. We'll do a follow-up on this. It's interesting, but now, Canon consider this a pro camera. Do you? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm really happy with it. I've been using it for the last 9 or 10 months, whenever it came out, and it's going to last me for years to come, that's for sure. So for my kind of purposes, it's brilliant. For pro purposes, is it going to serve? Yeah, I think so. Colour-wise, you can be able to match with the cinema cameras now, which is fantastic. So that's great. And that's it for this video. I've rambled on long enough. Check out the podcast. We've got a podcast coming up that side. That's starting today, actually. Season 3 will be out the next couple of days. Subscribe to the channel and check out this video here. You might like that. Until next time, take it easy.